Greetings, metalheads, and welcome to No Nonsense Metal Reviews. I'm George, and today I'm back with an underrated album. An album that I personally feel just doesn't quite get the love and appreciation that it deserves. So today's underrated album is an album which I personally have underrated and overlooked for quite a while. It is from the legendary, I think that is a very fair title for this band, legendary German pioneering heavy metalers, the superb Accept. And the underrated album, and I do feel that generally speaking it is widely underrated. The underrated album in their catalogue, although there is a few, for me is Russian Roulette, the seventh full-length album from 1986. So Accept really are a legendary band. They're a pioneering metal band. They are loved and revered across the globe. Of course, they have a few albums which can be termed as pivotal, absolutely essential metal albums. Albums such as Breaker, Balls to the Wall, Metal Heart, and of course, Restless and Wild. These are all absolute benchmark metal albums that really were, in my opinion, Accept on absolutely fine form. I absolutely love those albums. I would say that the Udo era, Udo Dirkschneider era, which of course ended in or after this album, I should say, after 86, that period for me is top notch. Accept, although I do love the latter albums, Blood of Nations and Up to Date, up to Humanoid, all great stuff, but I really do love Udo. I've absolutely fallen in love with Dirk Schneider's solo stuff, and his era in Accept is absolutely incredible. But Russian Roulette, this underrated album, this is something that I've overlooked for a long time, and I don't really know why. I don't really have a justifiable reason for why I've overlooked this album for so long. And I was thinking about this earlier because I overlooked it for a long time and then recently decided that I just didn't know the songs well enough. I thought, I don't really remember this. While I was going through the collection, of course, I thought, I don't really remember these tracks all that well. Gonna give it a spin. And listening to it again, picking it up and giving it a revisit after probably not listening to it in years, if much at all, it's like hearing it for the first time. It's like hearing some pretty solid, interesting, different, but brilliant heavy freaking metal. So this album, just go through our lineup here, consisted of Udo Dirkschneider on vocals, the legendary Wolf Hoffman on guitar, and I think Wolf is a phenomenal guitarist. He has a very signature, iconic sound. We've got George or Jorg, I'm not really sure, Fischer on guitar, Peter Boltes on bass, and Stefan Kaufmann on drums. Of course, Peter and Stefan, don't know if you can see that tiny little lineup overview there, but they have at later times joined Udo with his solo band, or UDO, but they're all very talented musicians. This is a really solid metal band, and it really does have that, streamlined, solid metal approach and sound. Absolutely fantastic. But this album, personally, I feel that it gets totally overshadowed by the brilliance of certainly the previous 3 or 4 albums. I'm not familiar with the debut self-titled album, which I believe was out in 78 or 79. I'm also not familiar with I'm a Rebel, the second album, but from Breaker onwards, I am familiar with Accept. And interestingly, I'd heard some of these tracks and actually grown to quite enjoy them a lot through Udo's live albums. Of course, Udo live, he's got so many live albums, but he does always include, or does seem to always include, a mix of Accept from his era, obviously, accept classics and gives them a bit of an airing. And picked up this recently. This is Live in Russia, one of many live albums from Udo, and also one of many live albums recorded in Russia as well. But this album actually includes a number of choice tracks and very good tracks from Russian Roulette. It includes, first of all, we've got TV War, which is the opening track of the album, which is a very good track indeed. Then we've got, a little bit later on in the album, we've got Heaven is Hell, which is a longer sort of mid-paced track. And we've also got the brilliant Monster Man as well. So it was really through Udo's solo stuff that I kind of got more familiar with these tracks. But as I say, I picked this up and I was really impressed. It's a pretty short and sweet album overall. Russian Roulette, not an overly long album. It's somewhere in the sort of 40 to 45 minute mark. So it's not an overly long, drawn out process at all. It's 10 tracks in this form, this remastered form. You get a couple of bonus live tracks as well. But obviously we're just focusing on the main tracks here. It kicks off with TV War, which is, it's a good heavy track. It's got a classic Accept vibe, but it's also a little bit more kind of melodic. There's a little bit more of something mid-80s about it. Maybe an influence of glam, or I don't really know, but it's not quite as balls to the wall, abrasive heavy metal. There's big choruses. All of the vocals are great. Udo is such a great vocalist, still is to this day. But TV War is a really good track. It's really catchy. It's amazing how catchy and memorable all of these songs are after even one or two listens. But TV War, solid kickoff to the album there. A better track is the second track, Monster Man, which is, to me, that's much more Accept. That swaggering, stomping, heavy metal. Excellent guitar work, brilliant twin guitars going on there. Sounds fantastic. It's got a bit of a stomp to it, as I say, a little bit of a swagger. And Udo with his signature vocals, it's fantastic. Third track is the title track, which is another sort of album highlight, an odd one. I think that overall this album is a bit of an odd sounding album. It's got an odd cover as well. I think that's a very interesting album cover. But title track, Russian Roulette, good song. Again, it's heavy. It's got the fantastic heavy chugging guitars there. Good stomp to it, good pace. You can easily kind of headbang along to it. Very enjoyable. What we've then got is almost a bit of a ballad track. We've got It's Hard to Find a Way, which is, again, it's very mid-80s. It's very 80s. It's almost like Accept meets Kiss meets Whitesnake. You've got this kind of big anthemic stadium rock track. And I think that kind of comparison is probably not too far from the truth, that maybe Accept, who were, not a small band by any means and still aren't a small band, but maybe they were trying to push it a little bit more, break into the mainstream, get a little bit more radio play, radio time. And It's Hard to Find a Way is a big anthemic radio friendly track. That's screaming for airplay. Absolutely. Then we've got Aimin' High. Aimin' High is a good track, definitely. Really, really catchy, really memorable. Plenty of hooks in there again. Some really good riff work. Heavy metal. Solid heavy metal. It's very uplifting, definitely. Then we've got Heaven is Hell, which is the longest track on the album. As I mentioned, this is one that Udo has given a good live airing to. And it's good. It's more of a mid-paced track. Longer one. It's got plenty of sort of gang chorus chanting going on in there. Really good song though. It's a bit anti-established religion, or a little bit kind of dangerous territory there, but it's very good. It's a very, very catchy track. And as I say, great guitar work there, fantastic musicianship across the board. Really like it. Another Second to Be is a very interesting track because that absolutely oozes and screams of, I want to say, sort of mid to late 80s era Kiss. It really does remind, there's something about it that totally reminds me of an album like Lick It Up, for example, or Animalize. There's something there. And again, I think that might be another moment where Accept were trying their luck with that kind of big anthemic stadium rock sound. But it does work. Another Second to Be is really catchy. It's really catchy. As I say, overall, this album is packed full of really catchy, really hooky songs. And Udo's voice is fantastic at this point. Walking in the Shadows, much more of an Accept track. Track number 8 there. That is much more akin to the sort of Metal Heart. Although I think they did start to get very grand and anthemic with albums like Balls to the Wall, for example. I think Metal Heart was very anthemic. Even the title track, very anthemic. Walking in the Shadows, that's much more of a heavy metal, twin guitars, swaying kind of track. It's a good fist raiser and just an enjoyable song. Really top-notch stuff. Then we get another interesting sort of ballady track. I say ballady track. It's heavy, plenty of hooks, but you've got a really soaring chorus, proper sing-along stuff in Man Enough to Cry. Man Enough to Cry is a very catchy track. And again, it sits comfortably alongside tracks like Another Second to Be and It's Hard to Find a Way. You can imagine them going down an absolute tree in some big arena, some sort of big American style arena. But it's a good track. Enjoy it, definitely. And the final track, Stand Tight, is again, that's much more of an Accept heavy metal track rather than a stadium rock or hard rock infused track. But I would not for a second say that this isn't a metal album. This is metal, but I think there is a bit of an infusion of other tastes and flavours in there, except to pushing the boundaries a little bit and trying some other things, which is totally understandable. But if we just for a moment put aside the fact that you had, that pretty solid run of 3 or 4 absolutely solid, robust, pivotal heavy metal albums, certainly including Restless and Wild, Metal Heart and Balls to the Wall, put that aside for a second, this is still, although it might not be as good as those previously mentioned 3 albums, it's certainly a strong album. It's certainly one that I would not overlook, and I will not overlook again. I have overlooked, and I do feel that it is one that, because of the brilliance of those albums, it is overlooked. Of course, after this, as I say, Udo did leave the band, went on to have a great run of solo albums with Animal House and Mean Machine, Faceless World, albums like that. But then he did come back in the 90s and had, again, a very solid run of albums. First one was Objection Overruled in 1993. And this is a different beast altogether. This is much more streamlined metal. This is much heavier than what we get on Russian Roulette. But I would still say that this is good. This is probably more going to appeal to fans of hard rock or bands like Kiss that have pushed hard rock into the almost verging on heavy metal at times. Those kinds of bands. But it's a solid album, and I would definitely say it's underrated. Underrated because I have read a few sort of damning reviews online where people have said, can't touch it, won't listen to it, sounds terrible. I try not to read too many reviews, don't want to be influenced either way, but I personally feel Russian Roulette is a solid album. And that's not just me saying that because I'm a big Accept fan or a big Udo fan now. It's because actually it's a really solid album. I would certainly recommend it if you're looking for some easily palatable, very memorable, hook-filled, catchy, heavy metal. Absolutely check it out. And also the live versions of the tracks that you get on Live in Russia. Live versions of Monster Man, for example, and Heaven is Hell, and of course TV War are really good. Absolutely recommend checking that out. So, my friends, what are your thoughts and opinions on Accept 1986's Russian Roulette? Do you agree it's an underrated album? Interested to hear thoughts and opinions of others as always on that one. What do you think of Accept? What do you think of Udo, the man, the legend, and his solo material? Interested to hear thoughts and opinions on that as well, of course. But thank you very much for watching, my friends. Do check out Russian Roulette. Absolutely check it out. If you're only going to check out a couple of tracks, check out Monster Man, check out Heaven is Hell, and I'd say also check out Walking in the Shadow. Very good. But as I say, only 45 minutes long. It's worth the time. It's a good album. But thanks again for watching. Feel free to like, subscribe, share. It's very much appreciated, of course. Check back soon for more reviews and recommendations of all the good heavy things. Until next time, take care of yourselves and stay heavy.